Another warm welcome to Yonah. Do I speak your name right?
No.
And is it okay? No. Okay, wonderful.
It's a good beginning.
Yeah, of course. Is it okay to call you? Is it Yonah? No.
Yonah, yes, Yonah.
Yonah? Okay, Yonah. Warm welcome again. And we're doing our breakout session now. And I think for some short rules to this Zoom session, leave your microphones on as well to just join in spontaneously. If you're not keen in English, with English like me, you may use the chat as well to just pre-form a question, to hook up a word, look up to ask for some perhaps translation, or you go to Google. It's a Dict or a DeepL will help you. And yes, is there something more? No. I would like to hand over to Yonah with the question if you need something else to work with that group, and perhaps the topic or a leading question for us to work on.
Yes, I have a few questions to you. So I need to better present myself and continue more at the main topic of education, or more about my work, because I have my own material. So what expectation from my presence here?
Okay, then the question to the audience: expectations for this breakout sessions. What do you want to hear, learn, receive?
When it starts, I can start talking. So yeah, I think for me it was interesting to hear all the experience and all the areas where you have experience in and where you worked in. I think more or less consensus in the panel was that the current way we think of education and our current education is screwed up, and we need to relearn and unlearn and learn other things. Yeah, I would be interested in your work and your thoughts around how AI can really help, maybe in school or somewhere else, to unlearn and learn the correct, or learn other things. So what is do you have practical experience where you can talk, or what is your vision, or what do you see where AI can help with fixing the screwed up education system?
Thank you.
Wonderful. So first of all, I would love to better present how exactly I'm involved in AI robotics technology and what type of challenges we try to solve. So on one hand, my main focus is use of AI and robotics for disability, neurodiversity, and many challenges focus on cognitive, sensory, tactile differences of humanity, different type of conditions, sometimes of disability, sometimes of aging, mental health, and so on. And but neurodiversity is the main focus, because 1 in 7 of people on the planet are neurodivergent, including Asperger, autism, and so on. So on one hand, I work as an evaluator at European Commission projects focused on AI, and I evaluate which projects receive funding. So if there is an emerging research in AI for, let's say, vital systems or speech recognition, computer vision, I evaluate these projects as a one level, as an emerging research in this field. Second, I have a growing portfolio of startups. Recently, one of them received a funding focused on solution in this field. For instance, data analytics for autism development. So then we gather the data from patients, from children, about their development, about their health, about different type of underlying condition, and analyze it. And in the similar way, I collaborate with other startups and organizations. On another level, I work as a kind of an activist. So in terms of a policy, so I came up with the several frameworks and suggestions for European Commission and different groups focus on accessibility and disability, how to properly research this technology, how to make it an ethical way, and how evaluate it. So I create 3 frameworks. You can find it in open source in my profile. So one was called Human-Centered AI and Ethics. Another one was called Research for the Divergent Lens. And another one, Technology Transfer and Evaluation for Accessibility Lens. So it's a kind of a documents and projects I've created in order to, let's say, create the open source ecosystem, not only, let's say, for commission, but actually for our innovators, developers, organizations. So more people learn about this work, about the problems, about the complexity of the spectrum. And finally, I'm trying to democratize this movement. So I work on hackathons, focus on accessibility. I mostly work with women in AI. I designed hackathon in the United States. It was called Zero Exclusion, and we were focused on mental health, education. And currently, I work on something similar in APAC. Probably I've done something similar in Europe as well, but they spent another hackathon focused on data. So we were a bit busy. So in terms of how AI help, so first of all, the neurodiversity and the problem of a spectrum is very complex, is a whole universum of experiences, is a tactile differences, visual, colors, cognitive, and so on. In most cases, when we talk about, for instance, autism, we take into account only cognitive differences, how people communicate or how we understand emotions. But the problem is, for instance, when we worked on data science startup focused on analytics of all of this condition, we explore over 100 underlying symptoms, conditions, disorders, sometimes completely out of neurological system. Sometimes it was about immune system, digestive system, and many other differences. Why? Because if we are trying to better understand neuroscience, we explore that the brain is connected with so many processes in our organism. If the brain works differently, it affects all of the system. And I explored it in my own journey because I have both disability, mental health disorders, and I use a lot of medication to regulate all of these problems. And that's why the technology around this niche is a very complex as well. So currently, actually, we work on another document of the vision of this technology, what type of projects have more potential to lead the market in the next decade. So first of all, is a neurodiverse hiring. This type of products and startups already successfully get funding. It's focused on connection of people with different type of cognitive ability and employers. So it's platform, for instance, which exclude videos or only use text or focus on particular type of opportunities. For instance, using primarily data science or engineering work for autistic employees. So we're trying to connect people of particular ability and particular opportunity. So it is a kind of the most successful type of a project. Second is a social robots for education. So one of the problems we explored specifically for young people and children, their sensitivity to sounds, to colors, to a lot of external elements which affect them in a very negative way. And more importantly, they easily become exhausted during a typical learning curve. So they need more personalized curve. So social robots is a kind of an educational tool that communicate child in more personalized way using particular curriculum. It's important to mention that such type of projects in companies create curriculums themselves. I mean, one of the exploration that schools are not able to adopt this technology now. I mean, we have examples in Luxembourg, we have examples in the United States, but it's still kind of a test pilots. But in most cases, schools, educational agencies, and organization, they need curriculums from such companies how to better use it. So they create curriculums, they provide some kind of educational support. So it's just a beginning, because it's a very complex. And one of the problems we explored in this field that such robots need some kind of ethics, because on the one hand, we create safe environment for kids, but safe is not always good, because, or it's better to say completely safe, because working with the neuroscientists, we shared that we need to come up with some kind of a proportion of a real life, real communication with real people, with real teachers, and some percent and proportion then child communicate with the technology or robot. So for instance, if it only communicates with robot, it limits its development, it makes it too sensitive to external environment, some unpredictable situations in real life. So we need to create the correct proportion. Another type of a technology is augmented reality and different type of smart glasses, which we use for in order to better understand emotions. So it's a type of technology with use computer vision on someone's face and build and better instruct child about type of emotions. For instance, your mother express, because most of these people don't understand or not able to completely understand someone's emotions, and it make them problematic to communicate with someone. So this is a kind of growing niche as well. Some of these startups working with Google Glass. So they just integrate particular elements to the Google Glass and use it for augmented reality patterns and scenarios.
This is to help people with neuro.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
By the way, there is a question in chat, how we reach children. It's a very good question. First of all, it's another part of a framework I work on, how exactly to reach children ethically and what's the appropriate age to reach them. It's exactly what I recently tried to solve. Typically, first of all, about age, the minimum age to interact children for design purposes is like 8 years old for ADHD AI apps that help with the ADHD and dyslexia. And for social robots, it's like 10, 11, 12 years old, and for more complex solution, even more. So it's a first. Second, we never communicate with children directly. And it's another crucial topic. In the ecosystem of neurodiversity and neurological disorders, we don't consider child as a end customer. The customer are caregivers, and caregivers include parents, include counselors, educators, nurses, a lot of people depending on the case and the spectrum. So for instance, then we recently work on the data analytics app for children. We needed to come up with understanding who and how provide data input in app. We have a data input for child and for parents separately, and we measure both inputs in order to better understand fluctuations in different perspectives, including personal and external. So in most cases, we work with our families, and we find them either directly. For instance, one of the founders of a company focused on this problem, a mother themselves, and most of the people who invest in such technologies are actually kind of activists. They either have children in their families or relatives, so we connect each other. We introduce families, we introduce like-minded people, we introduce some kind of a centers or educational schools focus on such problem, and they help us to find parents and families. So it's a kind of a very personal and indirect process.
And are they international, the families you connect with?
First of all, my work is a kind of international. For instance, our recent project come from Canada. Another project was from Denmark. We work with the project from UK, from United States, and actually I have a peers from Africa. There is a dyslexia center, so it's kind of a interconnected community is growing. It's kind of underrepresented, so I think this year was a critical for us because it was the first year then such type of technologies start to receive the funding. So it was extremely difficult just a few years ago. So the situation became different just now. Then more people who are parents, who are connected to parents or families, become some kind of activists or angel investors, or created some kind of associations to support such type of a technology. So only in this year, we get more support. Before that, it was mostly supported by European Commission grants and more kind of governmental and public support programs, but was pretty difficult to make it bigger. Another type of technology I just mentioned, along with the smart glasses, is AI training apps and solutions for dyslexia. So dyslexia is an inability to read or understand the meaning behind particular words, phrases, or understand the logic or abstract construction between words. So for instance, recently in European Commission, we work on startups focused on eye recognition, then AI try to define your eye position and your level of your focus on concentration on the screen to better understand how you concentrate your attention, how quickly you're able to learn, and so on. And there are several apps and platforms which work in this direction. Some of them use eye or facial recognition, sometimes not. Sometimes it's just about some kind of a storing of information about your progress, but in another niche. And another big niche, it's more experimental, is about biofeedback. It's then we use headsets, either for virtual reality or for biofeedback in order to control some external interfaces, specifically for people with physical impairment, when we need to control some technology just for neurofeedback. So it's a kind of a spectrum of this technology. Once again, we're in the beginning of the development of this market, but I really expect more and more success just with each year, because this year was very successful for most of our projects. In just a few months ago, I'm a part of a disability working group in UK, and we spent a very successful neurodiversity tech panel just a few months ago, when we discussed the vocabulary, existing technology, and the next step. And I think we are on the good way to grow with market further, though there are many difficulties.
Yonah, as you mentioned before, there's something open source, and you just mentioned if you look on my profile, do you want profiles out there in the internet? For me, is it just LinkedIn, and I search for a name and I got those links to the open source, or is there something you can share even in the Zoom chat to go the digital way to those projects, or to dig in deeper for the audience here?
Yes, most of this stuff you can find on my LinkedIn as an announcement. You can find it on my site, and I'm able to share it right now on the chat, including some recent frameworks. Just 1 second.
Yeah, take your time. And there's a question. Did you say Martin Fowler? Daniel raised a lot.
Yeah, I didn't got got the name. You mentioned this neurodiversity tech panel, and I understood Martin Fowler is part of it, but maybe I understood something wrong.
I don't remember. I have issues with names. I need to check.
Okay.
Okay.
Then probably I misheard.
Hi, this is Danny. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your sharing just now. I just one question regarding to talking about the AI, the part. Do you think about the you know now currently the children they are deal with some the robots, some the computer machine, something like that. They are not just like us. They are less. They are lack of the more opportunity to connection with people. So in the future, if the AI is more and more popular, I think the younger generation they may facing they are less the opportunity to communicate with the people because currently they are more communicating with the machine. So in terms of your view, what's your suggestion or what's your sharing how to build that the emotional or religious communication between the human being instead of the human being between the machines? So that's my question and that's my inquiry. And maybe I can get some insight from your part. Yeah.
Yes. First of all, it's a real problem, an existing problem, and I'm partially discussed and mentioned it just a few minutes ago. So first of all, one of the problem we face during development such type of a technology, it's a problem. On one hand, technical fixes, and then we just try to deliver another technical update, not without human update or changes in our understanding of criteria, education. So we just really consider people as a robot as well, and just build another update without reshaping. And another problem is the problem of filter bubble and echo chamber. Is then they put people one by one connection to the technology and with exclusion of a real humankind interaction. So one of the potential solutions is a creation of curriculums. And that's why many of the robotics companies and developers in our field, and I spend interviews with them, is a creation of curriculums which take into account the spectrum, the case of the classroom, the age, in order to create the tool that help people to socialize themselves and become a part of society, but not replace the society. So, for instance, I would love to even share it from my personal perspective. I have a sound sensitivity and I can react not really good way in a lot of loud sounds. So I use some tools in order to talk to people through more virtual tools, but just a tool. I don't try to replace people with robots. I'm just create a bit more comfortable environment for myself. With how, for instance, we use assistive technology like glasses, if we have issues with our eyes and so on. So the same with the robots. We use the robot either as a, for instance, educational tool in order to learn coding, but it doesn't replace another practices, it just complement it. And in terms of autistic people, autistic children, we use robot as a tool to prepare them to real communication. So it's just a tool to use them, to use it to prepare them for real communications, like a training. It doesn't replace, it's not replacement for real communication, for real life. And that's why we use the principle of a proportion. For instance, we start with more safe zone for them as a training, then person more engaged in tools in safe environment. But later we try to reduce the involvement of the technology and involve people in real environment more, real relationship, real understanding of emotions and so on. So once again, and just a tool. And it's critical not only from the point you mentioned, but from another important point is accountability. So for instance, if we create a lot of technology and our children become, let's say, disconnected from society, who are responsible for that? And I believe currently we have a type of a technical ecosystem, specifically in Silicon Valley, and people say, it's a problem of technology. We don't care about it. That's wrong. What's what we try to solve in the European Commission. And that's why, for instance, there is a growing lawsuits against Facebook, including cases focused on harassment, attacks, problems with mental health, which social networks create, including different elements, including disinformation, harassment, attacks, and so on. And the same with robotics. Robotics is just a tool, and we create the frameworks that, on one hand, trying to eliminate bias, create elements of fairness, but also define the levels of accountability in design and deployment. Who exactly create this technology? Who create curriculum? So once again, there should be real people behind this technology who use it. And that's why we talk about the ecosystem of stakeholders, parents, nurses, counselors, educators, who exactly use this technology, and within what type of framework, I mean, what type of curriculum, what type of environment, and what type of a goal we try to solve. We try to solve a problem of communication, mental health issues, anxiety, or something like that. So it's just a tool, and we basically consider it is a tool.
Okay, thank you. You know, in my view, that is that because I have a son just teenage, just 11, and I saw the change on him is that curiously, I don't let him to touch the computer, but when he grow up, I cannot prevent the change. So currently, for example, in the Saturday, curiously, he would like to go outside, just like go to the sporty or something like that. But currently, he stay on the before the computer can full day. So as a mother, actually, I'm very worried about that, because you know that the teenagers, they are not mature characteristic. They can control themselves. They are easy to attract by the virtual society and some game, something like that. So that's the any other solution. That means there is a different from the adult. We can in the due to this kind of situation, because we don't want to help them to control the situation when they grow up. Yeah.
Yes. So first of all, I'm not a counselor, and I'm competent to answer this question. I'm focused on technology and policies, but I'm able to connect you, if you want, with some centers which focus on this problem. Just a personal opinion. I abandoned, let's say, humanity and society when I was a teenager. I created myself in completely isolated way, only using a computer. I almost haven't communicated anyone except a virtual environment all of my life. And I think I'm not really crazy. I think I'm able to communicate. I'm able to understand. It's really depend on the case. But if someone just become part of virtual environment, it's not just it's not to reflect itself. It depend on different elements because. As I mentioned, neurodiversity is a spectrum. There's a lot of problems focused on cognitive ability, emotions, and many elements. It should be diagnosed by the counselor and specialist. So I'm not really competent. I prefer to delegate it to my peers and colleagues.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, since you all generating questions in your generating questions in your head, and there's one in the chat. What's your most important information for parents if the kids with autism don't want to go to regular school? Most important information, okay.
It's my questions. I have 4 kids, and all 4 kids are in the spectrum. And we have the problem that they can go to school. They don't want to go to school. And now we have 2 at home in the homeschooling. And this is really a good thing, but the socializing is really important also for the kids. And that is a problem because they are now at home most of the time.
Yes, I think I would love to express my personal opinion here because I'm not counselor and my experiences with people on the spectrum who are involved in different projects. So first of all, currently there are more social activities even in virtual reality, for instance. Most of the hackathons, innovative and scientific projects when children in collaborative way communicate each other, work with each other and create something together. Now we're completely remotely. We learn remotely, and there is a less opportunity to become completely isolated in 2021. I think it's just a completely impossible. I mean, if someone have some interest in something, there's higher chances we're able to find like-minded group, like-minded knowledge, skills, tools, and start to develop themselves in particular direction, participate in some projects. In my personal opinion, the traumas, the mental health problems they can get, for instance, attending the school are much more problematic than a lack of social skills. It's my opinion, because you're able to grow, build the skills at any age. And most cases, most of the mental health issues are not curable at all. I mean, most of my traumas I received as a child never become better. I used antidepressant all of my life, and kind of my personality is partially broken, for instance, due to the fact that I lived in the family of alcoholics, for instance. It's much worse than, for instance, the lack of socialization. You're able to learn it at any age. It's my personal opinion, once again. So if there is a really high potential person who would love to become a part of homeschooling, I think it is good. There are so many opportunities today to learn remotely, to work remotely. And one of the opportunities is also build the portfolio at earlier age than most of their other students, was what I've done, for instance, as a teenager. So I think it's not so bad. So the main information is all of the tools, projects, open source resources you're able to find pretty easily, depending on the interest, including social science, journalism, and so on, depending on the interest.
Thank you very much.
Just talk, Manfred. Manfred wants to say something.
And Markus also, they are both moving lips, but we can't hear you.
Don't you hear me?
Yes. But Manfred.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
I just wanted to add, I think it's not just an issue for kids on the spectrum. It's also an issue for kids in general.
Yes.
Because in our culture, it's something like you have to get ill just to say your truth. And when a kid says, hey, I don't want to go to school, reason whatever, our culture tends to make him go to school, or make her go to school, as long as she says, yeah, I'm ill, for example. That's something which we should think about. So hearing the truth of the kids may be a good one. So there is a reason why they don't want to go to school. So I would, just my personal opinion, I would underline what you just said, Yonah, listening what the kids' truth is. And yeah, not what our conditioning system wants them to do.
Hans, you are muted.
Yeah, I can. That's why nobody listens to me. Wonderful. I just wanted to ask Manfred if he wants to try with an unmuted microphone to tell us something. No. Oh, that's funny. Manfred, if you could hear what we hear, it would be funny for you too.
You sound like a chipmunk. Past one.
Sorry for the practical question, because it brings me back to sound. Yonah, you talked about a tool for you for dealing with sound issues. Is that right? Did I understand that right?
There is no particular tool dealing with sound, but I mean first personalization in interfaces, for instance, even how your social networks work, and there's something similar we try to implement in platforms. So for instance, when you like some content in social media, it's great recommended content, and the same different type of spectrum. For instance, recently we had a case. We spent a neurodiversity tech panel on the Zoom, and there was a sound in the Zoom when someone come in, and it was too loud, and most of the people were so annoyed about this noise. It was so loud, and organizer had no idea how to switch it off. So for instance, some conferences we try to spend in completely text mode, so people just ask the questions through the chat, and I'm just really trying to answer them in the text and the real time. It's kind of exhausting for me, but it is more friendly for a particular type of spectrum. And the same time, for instance, of the volume of the sound, over how bright the colors and so on. So for instance, we're able to create just a voting or some kind of a feedback system in apps and platforms when personalized experience, specifically for small children who are not able to provide or tune app manually. So they need some kind of a support. Sometimes it's complemented with the support of a counselor or a parent who tune an app based on the recommendation of the doctor or educator. So sometimes it's done manually. So maybe there are some special tools as well, but the thing I mentioned is just, let's say, combination of stuff I use in my life. For instance, most of the sessions I spend for the Zoom, not for the physical meetings, in order to avoid sounds and noise on the street, because it becomes quickly exhausted, or some bright colors, lights, which really can grow headache in very bad conditions. So I prefer kind of a low level of lighting in the environment, some kind of a pretty lack of noises. So this room, this Zoom, and this session, wonderful experience for me. And I try to recreate it again for all of my work, for all of the meetings, and so on. But I'm kind of a more or less okay person in terms of a cognitive spectrum and so on. But there are much more tougher cases when we have just a growing anxiety, catatonic conditions, some kind of a hysterical situations, and so on. As I mentioned before, when we work on data analytics for autism, we're around 100 different cases, manifestations, situation, terminology what exist. I'm a bit not medical professional enough, but there are many of them. And you can find some examples in the documents I've shared. So it's kind of complex.
Okay.
I would like to address one question. Is it okay? Perfect. And maybe yes, because I want to connect some of the dots that I have in my mind, and maybe also that are related to Sani's introduction in the panel discussion, also to Yonah, because from Sani we heard lifelong learning, which is so important, and that it also depends on learning culture or becoming a learning culture. And I wrote down a note from Yonah that you said the whole concept of education changes or needs to change. And then now your statements regarding that kids do not like in some countries to go to school, or that they have negative feelings also, like Marcus said. And I know you come from Germany, Claudia is from Switzerland, from different countries. And I'm very keen on asking you, Sani, and also Yonah, do you know good examples where kids like to go to school, maybe also in terms of lifelong learning or combination of technology integrated into education or learning? That would be very interesting, because you have such a broad overview where you come from your perspectives and experience backgrounds. So maybe you can share some of these good examples with us.
Okay. Maybe I can first. Okay, sorry. Yeah. Thank you, Christina. Your question. I think it's a quite good question that I would like to, for example, just like myself. Actually, I have about 20 years working experience. Actually, my learning after my graduated, I restudy of the master in the NYU after about 10 years later. So why I would like to learn the things in a so difficult way, because at that time I have to working in a company. So as a parent, I need to study as well. So I think the key things is the driven is coming from my heart, because that means it's a thinking. That's the things I needed. So I will try best, and no matter what difficulty we're facing. So I think the one thing is that what's the things you really want to get it. So the try or the other adapt, they like to do the things what they really wanted. So it's the one thing. And the second thing is, I think that means in terms of just you mentioned the study is learning is a lifelong things, because in our society, in our environment, you can see anything is changing. That means the changing is a constant topic. So that's the topic we have to facing during our century, during our period. For example, I think the technology, the speed, the changing is quicker than before. In my memory, that for example, because I major in the finance and I'm law, and the professional area is accounting and financing. In the 10 years ago, the knowledge and they are not changed a lot. So that means the handbook, the paper, the book in the university, they don't need to change it for a long time. But in the recent 10 years, it changed a lot. Even in the university, you can see that the professor, they would like to invite some corporate professional expertise to go to the university to give some speeches. The reason why they do that, because they want the student can learn some the updated status, updated technology, updated the corporate, the company situation to share to the students, so that they can learn what is the most happen around the environment instead of the campus. So I think the change is the key element in the current society. So these two factors to let us know that one the driven is from our inner piece, our in outside, and the second is in the external factor influence us. We have to do that. So that's two factors to let them. Just a suggestion from my side. Okay, thank you. Hope my comment can be helpful. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think if you have some
Yes.
supplementary, you can come. Yeah.
Yes. First of all, when people look at my work, they think I'm very experimental and disruptive, and I would love to completely eliminate all of the existing ecosystems and replace them with classrooms, with robots, technology. Actually, it's very far from my opinion. I'm much more conservative than some people think. For instance, in recent years, I use much more traditional approaches to education than ever before. I spent most of my life as an entrepreneur, but in the recent years, I work as an evaluator in very routine type of work for European Commission, and I love it. So what's the main the main idea behind it? I've trained myself, and I come from a very personalized experiences in order to prepare myself for society. And now it works better for me. And at some point, I couldn't work with people in creative way, come up with ideas and use some kind of a creative brainstorms. It didn't work for me at some point, but now it works. And I find it kind of not interesting work alone anymore. I mean, this model doesn't work for me anymore. It's too safe, it's too boring, it's too isolated. So I came through this period of my development. Maybe it took a lot of time, but that's how it typically works for many of the people with disability spectrum and so on. So my belief, the main problem we have now, it's not with technology. We have a lot of wonderful tools in technology. The main problem with people, the main problem was why I jumped to the technology. I born in underrepresented community. There was no empathy, attention, and nobody cared about my existence. So that's why I become a part of technology environment. Technology is something which cared about me. But after that, I explored people who care about what I'm talking about and what I'm doing. And now people are more importantly for me than technology. So it's not about technology or some fascinated schools, robots, AI. It's really about teachers who care, who listen to, and who are trying to come up with the more empathy, attention to a particular child. For instance, I still remember one of the critical teachers. I mostly was self-learner, but at some point I collaborate with teachers who provide me with some methodology how I could learn some stuff, and I learned more than in 10 previous years. Not just because this person was so fascinating in terms of techniques, but because she listened to how I typically work, and she came up with some technique for me in a wonderful way, and I still use it in order to remember things. I had a lot of issues with memory, with putting some elements and data sets into my memory, and thinking about abstract elements. So she helped me to better articulate, better understand, better memorize, and so on. So it's really about attention, not technology. And what's what I mentioned during my talk. The thing we currently seen in the society, not how people form technology, but how technology form people. What type of a conclusion people will be able to make about AI, why we do AI, what's the mission of AI, be the tool for what? For innovation, for evolution. So what type of, it's really about the lessons and the curriculums for all of us we came up, and it's kind of my main learning. So I believe the geniuses can come through completely from different countries. Most of my peers come through absolutely different countries. Vietnam, China, Central Africa, sometimes completely underrepresented community, but they come up with a super innovative solutions. And most of them shared that though they lived in the poverty, there was no maybe one teacher or one person or one caregiver or parent who cared, who helped them to understand and find a way. I think is a critical element of education, at least how I see it.
Thank you so much. And I think this puts even more into clarity from my side when you mentioned that robots are a tool, or all these things are tools for something. And that makes it so clear that we put more, or so what makes sense to put more emphasis on this, like you said, human side that needs to be connected to the technology side, like empathy, what you said, listening, caring, really giving attention. And if someone listens properly and finds out what kind of technology can help you, then you can bring these things together to learn, to educate, to create something even better. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's critical, this discussion about the purpose, not switching it from tool to purpose. We not only have this in education or AI stuff, also in capitalism, for example, money. It's screwed up. Money should be the tool, not the purpose. More money, and it's close to ideology. Yeah, all those things where you switch up purpose and tool.
I'm using this latency now to introduce a break. And that's all because of technology, latency in Zoom, and no one stops him. We are over time. Thank you very much for this information, discussion, questions. There is a last one from Christine, and I would like you both, Sunny and Yonah, to just answer it in, if that might work, in one sentence. So this kind of beside money, what kind of international support would help you most on your projects?
Okay. Okay, Yonah, I say first. Thank you for your kindness. Okay. In my perspective, I think beside money, I think the support us, the one thing is technology. Just you mentioned the Zoom, just like the COVID-19, nobody can use the team, nobody don't know use the Zoom. So far, actually, in the quite fast speed, we maybe just several weeks we start use the Teams in our from the Microsoft use the Zoom. That's very advanced the technology to help the people, no matter in work, even for the children, the education as well. Because for the epidemic, some of the children they have to stay home. They study via this kind of advanced technology in terms of the. I think that things can help us. Absolutely can help us. That's one thing. And the second things, I think the international support that I think currently the society, they are more communication than before, cross country, cross group. So that means the people, they have a mutually communicate connection than before closely. So that's two things. That means the people, they can exchange their idea, exchange their experience, even they can exchange their idea just like us today. So that's two things can help us to beside money. I don't think these two things need to spend a lot of money. Actually, some tools is not so expensive, right? And the people exchange their idea, they can share the experience. Is sometimes don't need to spend money, but we can get a lot of value on that. No need to us to be fail, get to successful. So I think this two way can help us to go further, no matter the mankind, no matter the geography, and no matter what kind of country. So that's the view from my side. Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, and from my side, definitely money is a very small incentive for me. The key incentive was the creation of environment. So most of my life, I tried to recreate all of the stuff I've missed. I tried to rebuild my way to ecosystems like MIT, for instance, or a startup or technology ecosystem. So at some point, I was some isolated child when was a journalist and wrote about stuff, and I never see it. And at some point, all of this ecosystem, all of this open source movement become a playground, and then everything is possible. When we create remote hackathon between Middle East, APAC, and United States, completely remote way, using only community, without any almost resources, money, and create some startups, and Intel comes to us, or Microsoft, it was completely crazy. Or for instance, I come up with idea to talk more about neurodiversity in different countries, in communities, different countries support us, and we spend these talks in different countries. An opportunity to explore so many cultures. It was completely impossible. So for me, is infrastructure, digital environment would help to bring all of this concept, which were kind of abstract at some point of my life, into the reality, making it possible with the actually very limited amount of resources invested in, mostly driven by some kind of a co-creation, co-innovation, support, community, and so on. For instance, with how women in AI works, with how most of the hackathons driven by MIT works. It's mostly about students, young people who create this initiative. It's really the main incentive for me, use it as an ecosystem.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we take 5 minutes for having a break. I'm thanking very much to Yonah and to Sami. You're staying here in the room, please, for the next breakout sessions. I think Sabina and Andreas they're already joined from the other breakout sessions. And I'm thanking the audience for asking questions, for listening. You may stay here, you may take a break, you may just join other breakout sessions, which are listed on the page. Yeah, use the Padlet for connecting, but there's a chat as well where all those information are collected. And that's from my side. Yes, open a window, take a 5-minute break. And we see us 1 minute before 6:15 p.m. again here. And dot. Thanks a lot.
Super.
Thank you.
With
Okay.
perfect.
Good.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe I can. I think if you don't mind, I can share my slide so that Sabrina and Claudia can show the slide, and maybe you may have some inquiry in terms of the slide. How about that? Okay. Let me do that. Okay.
Can I do that?
It's always
Yes.
learning by doing, isn't it?
Give me 1 minute. I start my file. Okay, wait a moment. Sure. Okay. Sure. So, give me 1 minute. Okay, something wrong.
But I may have a question to start, which I could bring over from the breakout session I just have been to.
Yeah.
In that session, we talked about that we basically living someone else's story when we talk about education. So we live the things from the past, from our ancestors. So my question to you both would be, what are your thoughts on that one first? And maybe we can build up on that one. So do you think we live on our ancestors' story, and how can we, interrupt that so we don't repeat the same mistakes that brought us here?
So Dominik, I mean, Yonah, can you answer this question? Okay, because I maybe need to think later how to respond that. Yeah.
Yes. First of all, it was one of the fears I had when I was younger. The fear of consumption, the fear of being consumed by the system. Most of the young people, specifically creators, innovators, they try to disrupt the system. So they try to come up with the new ways to do something. But the problem is there is a risk to invent the wheel, the bicycle. One of the lessons I explore, there is nothing bad to use some frameworks. For instance, when we create hackathons, we create some kind of framework of roles like a project manager, designer. It's simplified, but we use it just a scheme, and after that you can change it in your own direction. So, for instance, United Nations introduced Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals which present the vision of sustainable world. Someone could think it's like a dogma. We don't have another problems. No, it's just a framework, just an example. And when we work on the hackathons, we rely on some SDG goals like 3, 4, 5, 7, mental health, equality, sustainable cities, but we can personalize it, do it a bit differently depending on the community we try to fix, and so on. So I believe it's really important to use some kind of a framework in order to not repeat the mistakes from the past. And it's one of the roles of the history and social sciences in general, create these frameworks and lessons and analyze. But one of the things about social sciences is open-ended questions and open-ended statements. So they create some kind of environment for critical thinking. So there are different scenarios, different cases, different situations, different circumstances. There is no bad or right or not right, better or good. But there is a cycle of history, just to learn different cases and trying to come up with your own. So I think it's something would actually work is the role, ultimate role of the social sciences, and in something similar we try to introduce in technology, specifically in terms of the ethics, frameworks, design, and critical thinking of designers and developers.
Dominik, is it an answer to your question?
Yeah, I did to some extent. So what triggered me, and that's good. That's all about here. What triggered me is that Yonah just brought up the sustainability goals. So we also talked about sustainability goals in the previous breakout room, and we talked about what that actually means. I mean, I have a personal problem to talk about sustainability goals. I'm glad Yonah just said, it's more flexible and it's not rigid, and I share that with you, because I have a personal problem with the wording sustainability. I mean, I think it comes from to sustain, and to sustain means to keep going, and we should not keep going with the things we already do because they brought us here, So we need to redo some things and change, of course, some things. So which brings me back to the thing that we had this wording of living someone else's story, and we somehow need to get out of that because it's what made us to the persons we are here. Also, we are so far the environment, because the environment shapes the behavior. And my question is, okay, what can we do, and what can maybe technology provide us to disrupt that and get out of it? And yeah, Yonah talked about and scratched, of course, the surface of it, how we can maybe come out of that one, so we don't do the same mistakes all over again and all over again.
Yes. First of all, as I've mentioned, Sustainable Development Goals is not dogma. You can ignore it. I mean, the United Nations proposed them. Just consider it as a book, as any kind of informational source. I mean, there are a lot of books, there are a lot of guides, guidelines, frameworks. Feel free to come up with your own. For instance, I work on frameworks focused on AI ethics. I create completely my own using different sources. Maybe sustainable development goals could influence in some way, maybe not. I don't like this framework, actually. It's very abstract. Also, I completely agree with you that it's based on the logic that we should sustain some journey, but in some cases we need completely reshape something, completely eliminate something, completely disrupt something. So when such frameworks exist, you have a feeling that address to some kind of ideas. I mean, or people who are completely out of mind, or they don't live on the earth. So it's a kind of a, let's say, introduction to the problems of the earth. Like people who never lived on the earth, they try to understand what happened. I think the main problem why it happens that organizations like United Nations or World Economic Forum is a very bureaucratic. I've been a part of World Economic Forum, and most people have no idea about their colleagues and their peers because they just connect as a vertical. So in the very high level, there is a person who sends the task to a person on another level and so on. So in the way we are receivers of this feedback, receive this framework, and does it look like some kind of abstract stuff? Yes, I mean, with how it typically works. I mean, one of the problems that I explored in technology world, most of the technologies much more progressive than all of the politicians. I mean, in most cases, both multilateral organizations or a political organization use the language like from the past century. So we already talk about concrete algorithms of IoT in smart cities. They talk about some kind of sustainable cities. So what exactly you mean? Are you talking about Wi-Fi or water, or what exactly? Yes, I mean, that's kind of a stable world we exist. It's really too broad question why it happened. Social mobility, the lack of flat world, then there's a lot of verticals. But yes, that's how we work. That's why most of the stuff we create happen in bottom-up approach. When we really communicate with families, people, create some stuff directly, working with them, because most of the frameworks are very abstract, though there are actually exceptions. For instance, as I mentioned, my work focused on neurodiversity and AI. UNICEF created very good framework. It's called AI in Children, and it focuses on concrete tools, educational robots, and some recommendation for organizations. Or there are a lot of open source universities focused on AI or institutes, like a Montreal AI Ethics Institute, AI Now, based on New York University, which create framework for AI professionals. So I think there are good frameworks, not good frameworks. There are very political driven frameworks. There are practical driven frameworks. In the end, it is up to you. For instance, when I working on my stuff, I pick documents from the European Commission, from the several universities which are part of my ecosystem, like MIT, New York University, several AI ethics institutes like Montreal AI Ethics, from my working group in the UK focused on disability. So we're really connecting the dots. None of the frameworks ideal, so we need to connect all of these dots.
That was what I just thought. But Sunny, I'm not sure if you wanted to say something.
Yeah.
I just
Thank
go
you.
ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I would like to ask Yonah some question regarding to the Facebook. They changed their logo to Mentor. So can could we say that the new year will become, because I think the Mentor is quite different from the AI part. So that's my question, is that signal is a very strong signal for the people that we will facing some quite a big bang in the near future, or just my question. Yeah.
This question for me?
Yeah, I think that's a discussion. Yeah, because you know that in the technology part, I'm not so expert on that, but I just very interested on the Facebook. They changed their logo to Meta, 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 just a quite new word recently. So I think that the technology will grows up faster than before. So could we foresee that in the near future, maybe 5 years or 3 years later, the things will be popular quickly or not? Just in terms of the technical view. Yeah, it was a different between the AI part. Yeah.
Yes. First of all, it's a pretty close topic for me because we work in startups focused on algorithms for social networks and data extraction from social networks and analysis of the people. And we work on similar algorithms. We become later part of the scandals. Then was a Cambridge Analytica scandal about politics and using data for some political campaigns. So basically, at some point, anyone will able to extract the data from Facebook in order to predict some, make some forecast, political forecast, or influence some situation. So it's important to understand that Facebook is not just a social network, is a conglomerate of companies and products. So in different stages of their development, they're purchased other companies in order to build the vertical of advertising. So they make money on ads, and they need to, on one hand, eliminate all of the competitors, at the same time to buy companies which help them to integrate these ads or some agents of the and so on. At some point, political ads, social ads become the significant part of the Facebook, and they made a lot of money on this market, but it led to so many scandals and problems, lawsuits. So actually, there are a lot of talks about even division of Facebook by government, or even complete reconstruction of this company due to all of this involvement, scandals, and so on. So one of the opinions that Facebook changed not just the title, not just the name, but the whole targeting. They will more focus on young people, avoiding political content. For instance, if you will try to create an ads or the page with the keyword human rights, we will not allow you to create any ads, even if your page about robots. But if you use where the combination of word human rights or politics, even in different contexts, it will not allow you to create ads. So we try to completely eliminate any kind of social content, human rights content, political content, and any kind of even intellectual content, completely focusing on audience of a TikTok and similar networks in order to reshape their advertising flows. So Meta is another step in this direction: new audience, new ads flows, and probably a bit less bad mentions of a previous brand, because Facebook, you just Google Facebook and find all of the recent news about Mark Zuckerberg in Congress of United States. So the whole reputation of Facebook brand as a term, as a word, is not really good now. So I think we try to reshape this business, but it's a very complicated question. How is actually, is it easier for them? Consider all of this reputational damage, including jumping to another market, including that this market is a pretty crowded by companies like TikTok, which the fastest growing social networks in history. So it's a kind of complicated journey for them.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's quite useful and successful for the in terms of the different perspective. But the TikTok is a China company. Okay, I have to mention here. Okay, that's Okay, thank you.
What do you think, Yonah, or also Sunny, virtual reality? What kind of meaning will it have for our learning, or creating maybe even global learning spaces together? I see like little seeds or like little plants growing here in Germany. I'm involved in some project in a certain industry where we try also to do some workshops already in VR and connect people from, but within this company still, for not only meetings, but only for some small plans of learning environments. But we are not yet sure if it's only like like a hype or a trend, or is it something that is something that will last over time? What do you think from a global perspective, these kind of tools, because we spoke about tools beforehand in terms of AI and robotics, do you think it will have a meaning or something in the future of learning?
Actually, in my mind that I would like to show some example around in my around in myself. I think the society is a trend we cannot is a trend inventable, because for example, even in the no matter in the education, but in the reality of the corporate environment, some of the company they start to use the virtual technology for management to manage the business. Actually, in my current company, they use the virtual tool, just like paperless or the virtual tour in the factory. So in the near future, they would like to use some the warehouse the automatic warehouse. That means nobody in the warehouse. They use some tool, use some the automatic way to management the business. So come back to the education. I think the child, the future they will go to work. So they currently their education is for the future. The skills, hard skill or the soft skill in the working place. But the reality is the reality is that currently the virtual is really happen in the workspace already. But maybe it cannot spread in the most of the case, because so far the expense is high in terms of the manual work. But I think a company of the technology advance in the future, so the cost will be down. So that's the question mark we need to think about, that how to balance the technology and the human beings work, how to balance that. I think this is the question we need to face in the near future. Okay, I think Dominik have some question.
I just thought, as from my perspective, the next logical step, but I'm not an expert in that area anyway. But the next logical step for me is that that we go over to augmented reality, and that will happen as soon as it's cheap enough, and that telecommunication supplier can bring these to us via subscription. And then I see like new markets for personal training, for personal education, that you have something like this, there's somebody up there and you can talk, and this guy may be coaching you, guiding you, whatever, to something, or even, like technical support on machines or whatever it could be, I saw that at least from Microsoft at some point shared that you have this person showing you live, click this button and that button, and then you can open up the cabinet and whatever. So I think that is actually something that will happen quite soon. And I don't know enough about virtual reality. I'm always, thinking, okay, hopefully it's not the place we're living in the future.
But Yonah, do you think it's a useful tool for learning in the future?
Yes, there are several applications how we use augmented reality and virtual reality. As I mentioned in the previous session, we use augmented reality for emotional recognition, specifically for smart glasses, and we also use augmented reality at classrooms in order to create interactive demonstration at some specific studies like chemistry, geology, when we need to demonstrate something like exhibition. And we actively use virtual reality for mental health, specifically for anxiety and some not serious forms of depression, when we need to create demonstrate some scenarios or some situations, or work with PTSD or obsessive compulsive syndrome. And we also use virtual reality for autism and neurodiversity, also for some kind of scenarios, storytelling, for specifically for children. One of the things, first of all, these markets are established. These startups and companies receive funding, pretty serious funding. There's no any problem. But the whole promise of virtual reality didn't happen in the scope how it was proposed. And I completely agree with the opinion of John Carmack, who was behind Oculus Rift, who was initially from ID Software. He worked in gaming industry, and after that, virtual reality. So he's kind of skeptic about using virtual reality as a complete replacement of reality for a completely virtual environment when we all of it interconnected. Some kind of an abstract vision with Mark Zuckerberg recently demonstrate during Meta demonstration. So I think it's much more abstract, not only due to the technical capability to deliver it, but okay, we can do it. For instance, after a decade, for instance, we have enough decentralized computer power, quantum computing, and we're able to do it. But another problem that people don't need it. So currently we have a lot of technology. Most of the young people we communicate with, they have access to so fascinating technology, but they still would love to talk to real people in real life. So toy is a toy. Virtual reality is a virtual reality. The main thing about our brain, the brain is able to differentiate reality and virtual reality, game mode and real life. And we need real life, and we need this real emotion. And that's the reason why virtual reality doesn't work for serious form of mental health disorders. It's not able to seriously affect us or impress us in the form how real life, real practice, real treatment work. That's why it's very similar to robotics. Some robots are good, but they're never a replacement for real teachers, for all of the flexibility, human empathy skills, and variable approach, sometimes unpredictable, sometimes with mistakes, but with what we as humans expect and with what our brain enjoy the most. Because in most cases, technology become predictable. This concept, the problem of filter bubble, is inevitable. So anyway, we become a part of this game, then we come for the same levels again and again and again. It's become boring. So I don't believe, I don't see, and I don't believe in the vision presented by Mark Zuckerberg as some kind of virtual complete replacement. It doesn't look good, and it doesn't work in the current environment in which way. It's a good tool, but not something more.
I think you hit the nail there in when you say, is it a need? I mean, if I'm watching sci-fi films, the only places where I see that need is created is when the world is already really down, and that is not a world I want to live in. I mean, where you're separated somehow, the environment is completely destroyed, then these people flee into this kind of virtual reality. And that is not comparable to what we see today. I mean, I'm also playing computer games. It is for relaxing and thinking, or doing some strategy games or whatever it could be. So, but completely living in the VR, I hope that we don't have a need for that. But let's see.
The thing which you just described called drugs. And you can do it without virtual reality. And it's not a joke.
So
it's about the mixture and the attention. I like the word you used, the last breakout. It's all about attention.
And also, excuse me, Hans.
I just wanted to ask the other participants from the audience, Sabine or Claudia, if they don't come to word, just want to ask a question, give their thoughts to this discussion, then it's time for you now. Otherwise?
No, I have an information. My son, he said to me also that he can do mathematics and he can play a game in the same time on a computer. This is for me completely, I can't do that. So he likes to say that also to Yonah, because it's this virtual reality, all these things are really helpful for our kids. And I think this is the future, to learn things in a good way for especially kids in a autistic space. Sorry. So we haven't any question, but it's really interesting to be here. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your thought.
What I liked to add, just something small, is Johan said the word attention, catched your attention from the last session even, and real care. We had listening, and I really like that. Thank you very much, Yonah, for putting robotics or also VR and all these things as a tool. Or at least that's how I understood it. And what now resonates much with me is this kind of differentiation. When do we need what? And when is technology helpful? And you said it cannot replace real emotions or maybe learning with a teacher and so on. But in some cases, it makes absolutely sense to take in technology to bring in something where we have a need. And I think it's so much also about differentiating or to learning to differentiate for us, that we are now shaping society and the future and so on, to see when do we need what, and not to see there is another tool and we can take the tool for every kind of thing we want to solve. No, we need to really take a close look. When do we need what, and what cannot be replaced by technology? Where do we need something else? But where do we need technology? It's like putting your arms around technology when you need it. And sometimes also to see when is a more personal or emotional environment the most important thing. It's like the interaction, like you call it human, how is it called? To have the social part and the technology part that you combine in your work. And also I learned this from Sunny today, that you also see the both of these aspects, the human side and the technology side, and how can we bring these two things into a symbiosis, but also to value the human part will not be replaced in any way, but we add the tools. And I like that a lot. Yeah. So differentiation, that is my word that I'm now taking away from this session.
Yes, and I would like to add more comments regarding Dominik's question related to really deep virtual reality. And I would love to make a reference to medicine. Due to work with mental health, and since I'm a patient related to mental health disorders as well, we use a lot of antidepressants and painkillers. One of the key elements here, we use it in order to help patient to help themselves. It's not a replacement. So we don't use the level or dose would completely make them happy. With so high level of serotonin, so they don't see any problem at all. Or with so high level of dopamine, they concentrate it 100% of time like a machine. We just help them a bit in order to improve their condition and help themselves. And the same, for instance, the problem I have, the chronic pain. If I will use painkillers all the time, I will not try to solve the problem underlying this pain and cause. Endocrine, neurological problem, painkillers doesn't solve anything. And the same with the virtual reality. If you need virtual reality to completely abandon real life, you have a mental health issues. I mean, it's the same like a drug addiction and alcoholism is actually a serious problem. And I believe it's one reason why so many people who were evangelists of virtual reality in some point start to talk about ethics and some kind of a limitation of this use in some kind of limitless way is a kind of a complete replacement, because inevitably we go into a situation within people who are currently addicted to the drugs or medicine become addicted with virtual reality, because in most cases the underlying problem behind all of this cases are mental health issues. So if we provide people without any kind of hope in life with complete replacement, there's no any difference as we provide them with drugs or cocaine. I mean, it's terrible. And it's not a technology, it's not a solution, it's not innovation. But unfortunately, actually, it's another serious question, because I'm involved in mental health market and startups in this field. One of the problematic situation we have now in tendencies, there are more and more startups who just try to legalize psychedelics, for instance, not use it as a source for new medicine in legal way, but just use sharing economy trends in order to legalize a lot of different stuff like hallucination stuff, psychedelics, and so on, without medical attention, without professional involvement. So it's not good. And exactly the same with virtual reality. Without right curriculum, it's just useless. Augmented reality, virtual reality, all of these headsets, and the same what I mentioned about robotics. It's really about educators who create curriculums for particular type of a spectrum. They create personalized scenarios, videos for children, put into this reality. It's not just kind of I do it on my own. I see some stuff every day in virtual headset and just go from real life. No, it doesn't work in this way. It's a very complex thing.
Yeah. I think I also would like to supplement some point in terms of this topic. I think with the AI, the technology, actually the people, human beings, they can change it accordingly. For example, just like the finance area, in the previous 10 years ago, the accounting, the bookkeeping is typical as a finance job. But currently, most of the finance people, they would tend to just like a financial analysis, just like the business partner, because that part is need the human being to communication with the people instead of just bookkeeping. The bookkeeping part is a quite repeat part and a quite logical part. This can be handled by the machine is better than the people. So my point is that during this kind of situation, the people they can also update our hard skill or the soft skill, and then we can adapt to the new trend based on the new technology. So that's the situation we are human being can also advance ourselves in terms of this kind of situation. So that's the supplementary part I share here. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. Thank you
for this discussion, for the views.
Yeah.
And the points. We are heading to 7 p.m. and to the end of this breakout, where Sabine lost us. We lost Sabine because of a bad connection. That to be set to the infrastructure that Yonah just needs besides money. And yeah, I thank Yonah, I thank Sunny for being with us this afternoon, for joining, for giving thoughts and ideas into our social sculpture. I think for me, it's the time to stop the recording and then to summarize all that has been said in the last 2 hours. And I'm a little bit afraid of before that. And yes, I say have a nice evening and see you soon in that internet, and bye-bye. But Christiane wants to say something.
Just one question, Hans. Would it make sense to give Yonah and Sunny a short minute, maybe to summarize what they have learned today? To ask them maybe what they have learned or what their takeaways are from the session, so that we can take something for the FORMWELT team that we can take a look on later.
Good, a wonderful question. Yeah.
Because we learned a lot here.
Since you are a facilitator as well, just ask the question again, please.
Yes, the question for you was, maybe you can shortly summarize what are your takeaways from today's session, from the panel discussion with all the panelists, and maybe also from the two breakout sessions that you had with us. And we are very keen on getting to know from each panelist at the end of the sessions, what are your takeaways, maybe your learnings, or maybe something that irritated you, or some questions that surprised you, whatever it may be, so that we can hear something from you at the end of the session.
Okay. So we will. Okay, Christina. I want to know that we share here or we reply later. Shall we share here or?
I think yes, Hans. Or what do you think? I think we close the session right here.
Okay.
We do not go to somewhere else. Yes, we stay here.
Okay, sure.
And we close the session right here. Yes.
Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Sure.
I think thank you. I think during this session, I think the one thing we're talking about how to view of the current situation of the education of the children, and we also looking at the future we are facing about the human being and between the machine and the technology. So one word from my side is that we the future is not far away, it's a very near future, very nearby us. So we need to look forward on the children's education, the trend, and how to educate them to look for the what they will facing in the near future. So that's the parents' responsibility. And the second, as an adult, we also facing the same situation like our children. We need to use the tool to help us to facing the challenges from the new technology period. So that's the conclusion from my side. Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, in my conclusion. So first of all, there is around 1 year since the past event, and I spent around 70 talks during this period and launched many projects. And there is a significant difference in how people perceive the topic of neurodiversity and technology around it. One of the problem I've seen before, people really thought about it is more like doing good in order to help some not really healthy people to be included to society. One of the changes I see now is seeing the society is more like a modular system, more like an environment, like an ecosystem, like a infrastructure. When we have some flows which we need to fix in order to help anyone to be presented. And it's necessity, it's not an option, it's not just doing good. It's put into constitution. People have right to have a job. But for instance, 90% of people on autism spectrum are not employed. I mean, and helping them, it's not doing good, it's just necessity of the economy, and economy will benefit from it. Second, that's how we all the panelists feel we build economy of creators. We talk about children, young people, but we actively use the terms like agile, scrum. All of this terminology come from product development, technology world, but now it's become a part of a vocabulary at schools. It's just so fascinating, which we create economy, not passive observers or listeners, but economy of creators since very early age. And most of the panelists share this perspective, and I'm really happy about it. And finally, how we're all connected. All the panelists presented Africa, Asia, China, Europe, United States, and we connect all of this perspective, and we kind of on the same wave. We see these global challenges, we see how we connected, how we mutually affected these challenges. And now we're just trying to come up with the right tools. I think it's really good news. I feel less disconnection I felt before. Really, we need to push anyone to think in some direction. People really talk and think in very similar way, in a good way. We talk about similar problems, we understand, we define it. So now we just need to come up with a solution, because there's a really good opinion. Any solution starts with the problem, and we understand the problem. And now we're just trying to solve it with the right tools. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll search for the right tools. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And now it's time to get into the evening and leave this session. Yeah. And we wish you all the best.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
let's stay connected.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye. Bye.